As far as applications, UC system is test blind for admissions and for any aid. The test can be used for placement, and that includes for out-of-state students. But I would wait and decide if you get in, decide then whether to send or actually just send your score and see if you're able to, skip any of the general education requirements, et cetera, based on your test score. The Cal State application, much simpler. You can apply to all 23 campuses. I should note it's $70 per campus, both for the UC and the Cal State system. They want to put a barrier up there so you're not just checking off every school, but much more straightforward application, very limited space to talk about extracurriculars. They really used to rely almost exclusively on tests, grades and tests. They are also test blind currently. Any day now, they're going to vote on whether or not that's going to be permanent. It's a high likelihood that it will be. So they will likely not be taking tests as well for admissions, for aid, for anything other than placement. So if you're applying to the UCs, if you know ahead of time, let's say you have your eye on UCLA and you're perhaps a sophomore, the UCs and the Cal States use this system called A to G requirements. It basically means that they have a set of courses they like to see, and they like to see a C or better, and actually, of course, a much higher grade than that. If we're talking about some of the more selective schools, but they don't use the A to G system for out-of-state students, but it's a really good guideline for what they want to see, the classes and the number and the type they want to see. So I would look at their site to see what those A to G schools are while you're doing class selection in 10th and 11th grade. One interesting thing about both systems, they only use 10th and 11th grades. 9th grade grades, they can see, but they don't calculate into their GPA. They're just looking at those 2 years. They also really look at the classes you're taking senior year, but of course they don't have access to your grades senior year because the applications are due in November. Also for out-of-state students at the UC system, the honors classes don't get a bump in their GPA calculation. They recalculate GPA. Their AP or IB classes will get a bump, but their honors classes will not. For the Cal State system, the bar is also higher for GPA for out-of-state students, and they do use some additional factors, of course, beyond GPA, more limited than the UCs. They're going to look at your extracurriculars, et cetera, but it's a little bit more, grades are a much more important factor at the Cal State system. If you're looking for aid, even in California, aid is very limited at both systems. At the UC system, 90% of aid is used for need-based aid, even for Californians, so that merit aid, very little is given. Out-of-state federal aid may be available, but very little UC aid, if any, will be available. So you need to be able to swallow that much higher price tag. Same goes for Cal States, although they're about $50,000 a year for out-of-state, but very little aid also for out-of-state, or frankly in-state, because our in-state price is quite low. I would say if you're considering the UCs or Cal States, there are some pluses and minuses of both systems. So the UC schools, some of the UC schools are some of the top public universities or any university in the country or in the world, right? Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, I throw Santa Barbara in there, some of the others, really high quality institutions, great programs, some very unique programs. So that's a bonus, right? Especially for those of us in state, because the value is certainly there. Lots of internships, lots of businesses in California. So depending on, of course, where the UC is located, really a lot of great opportunities to get some good exposure and work experience outside of the school environment. Our locations are great. You probably don't want to tour UC Santa Barbara. I remember touring it and standing right where the freshman dorms are, and you have a beach view from the freshman dorms, right? It's pretty incredible. UC San Diego, similar. It's in La Jolla, incredible community. Our weather can't be beat. So a lot of great things going on at the UC system. Some minuses, these are large universities, quite large. You need to know how to navigate and advocate for yourself in a large university setting. You may think because it's UCLA, right, you're going to get sort of a lot of extra handholding. You really don't. You need to be able to navigate to get those classes, et cetera. I'd also say the negative for an out-of-state student is the cost is high, right? It's comparable to a private university. You kind of have to know that going in. For the Cal State system, the two flagship schools, Cal Poly and San Diego State, they all have some really good programs. Cal Poly's engineering, their business, their architecture programs are very well known, even outside of California, very strong. San Diego similarly has some really fantastic programs. I'd say beyond those two schools, there are some really great programs at some of these schools, but these are public universities similar to what you have in your state. And so the conversation would be, can I get a similar education? Can I get similar programs in my own state before I'm perhaps flying across the country, paying double the price to get maybe a comparable experience? So I would do some digging into the programs there. If there's something they have that you really want at Cal State LA or Long Beach or somewhere, there are some great universities there, but I'd say you'd want to do that research. The Cal State schools also are large. You need to know how to navigate them. Some of them have 40,000 students. They also saw a decline in enrollment over the last few years. So I'd want to make sure that their budget, I would want to look and see how they're spending their money and making sure that decline in enrollment is not affecting quality of education. Most of the majors are impacted at most of these schools. It is a bit harder to get classes, maybe a little bit harder to graduate on time. And so it's going to take some self-advocacy and some resilience to navigate those larger universities.
Lauren, that is great information. Thank you so much for sharing that for all the parents and students who are looking to possibly study in California. Thank you everyone for being here today on College Planning Tip of the Week, and we'll see you next time.